Hi, welcome to Quality Intelligence Food Safety. I'm Coleen Thornton, your host and principal consultant for Heaven Sent Food Safety Consulting. Today, I'm talking to Carolyn Yu of Curious Navigator, a food safety consultant specializing in on site support for when your quality director is out on leave, you're looking for the right candidate and don't just want a body, or you need specialized help with a project. We're going to about the themes of a recent conference Carolyn attended and what the industry is focusing on. Let's listen to the insights Carolyn can give us. Thank you very much, Carolyn Yu from the new consulting group. You want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your consulting?
Yeah, Colleen, thanks for having me. I have had a good about 17, 18-year career in the FSQA industry, have done some dairy, nutraceuticals, and my most recent appointment was with a very well-known, very beloved brand of confections here in the United States. I have decided to just unplug a little bit and give my knowledge, my experience, my passion a little bit of a shot. So I have come out and be a standalone consultant to really do, I would say, mostly two things, to really good find partners like yourself, Colleen, to do some supply approval, FSVP side of things, really to help small to mid-sized food manufacturer here in the States to find a strong footing and to do the right thing forward. And the other part is to explore what companies may need. They may not see a need yet, but I do see from my end of the table is to step in and give them a hand when they need to on a short notice and hit the ground running to really fill in as a FSQA management staff, roll up the sleeves type of role. So what does that actually mean? So sometimes when you have staff members that go on leave, LOA, FMLA, intermittent, where you need a capable pair of hands and eyes and ears to hit the floor running. I would proudly say that I thrive in that environment and can surely step in and help.
Awesome. That I think that's a big need. I see a lot of times where they are missing somebody for whatever reason. Somebody's left, they had to go on maternity leave or had an unexpected medical situation, and then it's not easy to find the right person. And they, rather than putting a body in that place, having somebody like you come in and really assist them to make sure that they manage the coverage between times, and then also for looking at things just a little bit of another set of eyes to get them to keep them going and get them going again makes a whole lot of sense. So I wish you all the best on that. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about a conference that Carolyn attended, and since we don't all get to go to these conferences, and sometimes the travel expenses or whatever are too much, but we would like to be able to take some of the information away. Carolyn has been kind enough to say that she would give us some pointers from a recent conference and tell us about the conference. Tell us about, you know, how you would evaluate whether people should go to this conference next year, and tell us about some of the things that you took away from that conference then.
Yeah, happy to do so. So I have had the fortune to attend the Northern American Food Safety Summit 2025, was held this year in Austin, Texas on September 14th to the 16th. The big reason I kind of came across it was because it has been on my radar for a few years. Last year, with the generosity of my prior company, I was able to send actually, a staff member of mine and have received good feedback. That was the main thing. And then the second main thing was one of my prior assignments. I had a really great VP who is chairing and facilitating a lot of the panels at this particular summit. So it definitely was, to me, it was a very good opportunity for me to go and see him in person, show up for him, and to show up for the industry. And I do believe that interaction is mutual. So I was definitely intending to go and learn something, to pick up something for myself, but reciprocally, I trust that, I would have nuggets to put in others' pockets as well. So that was a conference, and I would say two main takeaways. To keep it fairly crisp and simple, I would say the first big takeaway for me would be, back to basics, do the work, and the second takeaway would be embrace technology. So I will take the time to dive in a little bit on my first point. Back to basics and do the work. I would say four main sub points to support this main point. The first point being performing the food safety plan review is a big feat. A lot of times, this is kind of like a once a year before the audit, let's do it, like let's gang up and do it together type of thing. But I think it is very important to really be realistic with your expectations and the time and the energy required for it, and
Okay.
plan so accordingly with your multidisciplinary team, get their buy-ins, look up schedules, block off times, and agree on everybody's duties, expectations, the norms for the meetings. How do you want it to happen? Is it an hour block meeting for 3 times over the course of a month to get it done? And how so? Get that aligned, and it's important to make sure that we do that so that we don't just scramble, get together, check the box, and a group thing. Yeah, 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 it's good. Let's just sign off and keep a few minutes and close it, right? You really want to make sure that there is a meaningful dialogue and discussion, and challenges some of the things that you have put down last year.
Do they actually talk about going out and walking the flow chart?
Most definitely. I would say the conference itself was about 2.5 days. Sunday was half a day, and then day one was a Monday, day two was a Tuesday. And there were a lot of panels and individual speakers and even breakout rooms, tables, if you will, where we had a chance to really mingle with different attendees and delegates to share best practices and even open up some vulnerabilities to discuss, hey, what are some of the things that you are doing that maybe I could do better, vice versa. And the walking piece was definitely enforced at least one, particular a delivery of message, and that's why I package it as back to the basics and do the work. Because I think most people know that yeah, 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 that's what needs to be done. What else is big? What I just said, back to basics,
Right.
have the right meeting, and actually part of it would be to walk the floor, have the product brought in, to do the dissection of the product review, to actually review it and to challenge some of the assumptions that you've built in for the last 12 months, assuming that you're doing this at least on an annual basis.
And if there's variations to that product, probably you need to be walking them by the variation, I would assume, because
One.
at this point, like during our audits, like I shouldn't be seeing a lot of HACCP plan nonconformances, but I sometimes do. And they've had similar HACCP plans for a very long time, and that would be really odd. And why would we need to have those nonconformances if we were going back to basics and making it where there shouldn't be anything, right? You should have already seen all of those things. I frequently see issues on those best back to basics on things that they only do once a year.
And again, what I'm saying is a pretty broad stroke and umbrella type, where you're doing this like, once a year, but at the same time, obviously, as things change, and this is where the management of change management comes in very important, is when those changes kick in, you do have to ask yourself is what all have to be re-reviewed, reassessed, and updated such that nothing gets left behind, right? Such as a very important piece, which is your food safety plan, right?
Yeah, I think too, considering the amount of changes that we're seeing regulatory wise, those product descriptions, those ingredients, those things like that are probably going to be high on the list for auditors to be looking at come next year and the following year, as especially as different states put in prohibitions against different colors or some of those items that would make things shelf stable or antimicrobial. Those are things that auditors are going to start looking for as the regulations come into play that need to be addressed either in 231 management of change or in 232 on the SQF code for specifications. These are all obviously in BRC and SFSC 20000 as well, and then also in the HACCP plan itself. So, and verification validation as well. So I think you've got, there's just a lot in play right now.
But absolutely. I mean, it's and this is the reason why it is very important to really have a multidisciplinary team because one person or the two or three persons on the QA team, they have the brunt, they have the responsibility to do it because that's what they're hired to do. But it's important to have the eyes and ears and the minds of many to remind certain things, why are certain things have to be done that way or to be modified that way, and that way there is that dialogue, right? That's where the money is. It's the dialogue and the discussion, the constructive discussion to say why are things happening the way they are, and should we go back and roll back to conform to what we had originally had on the specification on the plan, or what it's time to actually do for an update and let's roll out a different set of risk assessments and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I frequently don't see a change management or a review in the HACCP plan and process review for automation. And there are some things in automation that could affect the product, especially when you have suction cups on robotic arms, or you have lots of additional plastics or breakable pieces. Sometimes those things are very hard to clean too. So, from an environmental standpoint, we don't see that process and those upgrades always reviewed very well in the back to basics process and then the HACCP plan. So definitely some things to be added to or thought about. Did they give you any other suggestions or thoughts on those?
Yeah, I would say, we can come back a little bit on the last point that you've made a little bit about as investment technology and improvements, upgrades come in, how should changes be remembered and be incorporated into something as important as specifications, for safety plan. We're not gonna dive super deep into it, but I would say that it will have to do with the second main point that I have about embracing technology, because there's just so many platforms and products nowadays that can help you do that. May not be exactly that, but somewhere along the way to help you manage change and to ensure that they don't get left behind, right? So,
Okay.
and speaking about, there are 4 points, 4 sub-points to support the big point about back to basics and do the work. The second sub-point that I would like to mention is challenging the status quo and assumptions of your existing food safety plan, right? Change is constant, right? People change, org change, facility change, right?
Ingredient change.
Ingredient change, right? Regulations change. Change is constant. We have to live with it. New information obligations emerge, right? So we should really have a checklist of incorporating metrics such as near misses, actual incidences. Hopefully, as actual incidents occur, will ensue kappas, root cause analysis, and such things, lessons learned, right? Those
Even for the holds, right?
Exactly. Yep. And lessons learned from other corporations, right? As you read warning letters and response letters, back to 483s and such, sometimes when they're made available, those lessons learned you should definitely incorporate, and results of your own internal and external audits. When we do our review and update our food safety plan, I think sometimes there's just really a myriad of things that you can incorporate into as you review and you lose track of them. So I think it's really important to make a good checklist of them and to make sure that, hey, let's have all these things skied up and ready when it's time to do the review, and to make sure that we remind myself and we remind our team of these are some of the things that the battle wounds that we have endured for the last period of time since our last review, and let's bring this up and incorporate those learnings as part of the review that we have, and challenge some of the status quo, some of the built plan that we have, and some of the assumptions that we had made last time when it comes to risk assessment, which obviously are the basis to support our decisions on our food safety plan.
And FDA just put out two new transparency options for us with investigations of outbreaks and things like that. I'll put those in the attached information so that people can get to that, so we can learn from things other people have done and not hopefully not have them hurt ourselves in our companies, right?
Yep. And Colleen's point number 3, be receptive and keep learning. Obviously, we don't know what we don't know. So I would say that I think that has been at least one very humbling aspect for me, for coming out solo and exposed to the world of helping others, right? And I think in the process of helping others, I'm also helping myself to understand that, wow, there are a lot of things that I have yet to learn and have yet to.
We're always learning.
And I would say for me to take away would be really signing up for newsletters. I mean, there's so many great people, great professionals, active versus retired, that are so generous with their information. I think it's important to leverage those resources and sign up for those newsletters, daily, weekly industry digests, warning letters and recall notices that the FDA or FSIS put out, journals like right Journal of Food Protection or Microbiology, webinars from reputable organizations. I think IEH and several other laboratories do put out some really good webinars out there bi-weekly, monthly.
IFSQN does too.
Exactly. Renew certifications with HACCP and PCQI 2.0.
Oh, yep. 3
Uh,
days now.
exactly, like a myriad of just resources to make sure that you are receptive and just keep your engine running and fresh and clean. And then also, I think sometimes we forget when we, especially when you're part of an organization, we have to do our part and be a solid contributor and team player within our own company. Because sometimes hear a lot of, well, nobody cares about us. We're on our own island. So I'm reaching out to industry groups and I'm here to pick up best practices or I'm here to share best practices. But if you're not a solid contributor and a team player within your own company, it's hard to give, to others. So I think it's really important. And there's so much to learn from your own production team, your sanitation team, your maintenance, your engineering team, your management, right? So I think it's really important to, again, back to the umbrella message about back to the basics is be a good contributor and team player within your own company. And then last but not least is show up for others in the industry in a responsible way and really can help others level up. I think there's a fine balance, right? To be out there, to be a contributor to industry groups, work groups, and whatnot. But I think when you do so in a sensible, in a responsible manner, it does help yourself and help others and help the industry as a whole to level up. Yep.
Cool. That's great. So you were talking about technology. Talk to me about the technology world. I know everybody's talking about AI and all these other technology things. What are they saying's out there? What are they saying's working? Maybe not working quite as well as everybody's hyping it. That kind of thing.
So I'm going to jump a little bit into the embrace technology aspect, which is the second main takeaway nugget from the conference. I would say the two sub points from the embracing technology. I would say first one is digitization. Obviously, we know digitization is not new. It has been around, right? And we know it essentially means moving data collection from pen and paper to electronic devices, right? And there's so many different products and platforms and just the competitiveness in this space to compete for market share, to compete for CPG or the food industry, nutraceutical industry as a whole is quite impressive. I would say, when, I was just recently in the industry side, I would know a few big names, of course, that will fight for our contracts and whatnot to help us integrate and do the digitalization. But I think attending the conference really does condense and just a wave of all these service solutions providers really sharing what solutions they have. And I think what's novel and what's important for one to remember is a lot of times when in a position to figure out what is the next big technology that may work for you, that assessment might be done a few months ago, maybe done last year, saying, hey, it's too expensive, it's too complex, we're not ready for it yet. I would caution and encourage, my colleagues in the industry to really reconsider that and be open-minded because things are just changing so quickly and what might not be sensible last year now may be economical, may make money sense because now not only this function can service your department, but can actually be integrated with CRM, with other productivity metrics as well. And that makes the whole solution more holistic and more sensible for a company as a whole. So I think it's important to just stay in tune and on top of that. And because a lot of times when you're just being tunnel minded, you're just looking for FSQA or lab solutions, that might not be the topmost thing on your IT department list because there's so many myriad of things that the IT department has to care for and look after from a big company standpoint. So I think it's important to look at that angle for yourself and bring back the information and collaborate with others and to see how those solutions can be adopted. So I think that's important.
What I'm seeing out there, and you can tell me if you see something different. I'm seeing a lot of data collection and unfortunately a lot of like data entry for people who have master's degrees. And that I'm not sure we have the value out of that. That's a lot of time with a lot of data collection, but not actionable data that is collated and reviewed and managed and trended in a way that truly drives ROI. I'm seeing a lot of people holding on to a lot of data. They're spending many, many hours back office, getting the data into a database. But in the meantime, I personally am seeing where they're missing time on the floor and missing big risks at the same time they're sitting at a computer doing data entry. For people who have very either highly educated, they're very experienced in their field, things like that. So tell me, like, are you seeing other options or other solutions out there that are not just either a ton of scanning where I can't find what I need anyway, or just a bunch of data entry that I'm not using? How are you seeing that? And I mean, have you seen a lot of good tools out there?
Well, most definitely. I've definitely met up with a few solution providers that I've worked with before, or have pitched to us before. Hence my comments, right? Because I would think that I definitely went to the conference with a little bit of a preconceived notion of, oh, it's you again, right? I wonder what's new, or it's just old news, right? But old news, funny, but is really like, wow, it's just been a mere 6, 7, 9 months, 12 months. Wow, now you're coming out with a, like, 2.0, 3.0, 6.0 version of it already, right? So I think this is where, um I would say, where the solution provider need to be persistent, and need to be novel in their way how they approach the customer base, um, whether they're existing customer base or customers that have rejected them before. They really have to find novel ways and be persistent to continue to approach them. And from a customer standpoint, don't give up on those solution providers. And be honest with them. What didn't work for you? I think you have to be candid with them. It's like, this is not working, price, or the scheme, or your technology as a whole, or your devices or hardware doesn't work for me, or the way how you're going to help me or not help me integrate is not helping me. So I think it's important to have that feedback. That way they can actually really come and help you, because they are hungry to earn your business, and there's just so much smartness out there, technology out there that can really help lessen that. And to your point, your very specific point about collecting information, hoarding information, spending a lot of time away from the floor and really manage the information, clean information, present the information. I mean, 200%. They definitely have improved in the collection, in their presentation, in their analysis, and this leads to the bring home point I have for the digitization under the embrace technology aspect is, this also means that the FSQA team needs to really have people who are equipped with the statistical analysis skills, to understand what do the data mean to me, and how can I actually make good use out of it. I'll just speak to myself, right? I have some, like, 1 or 2 or 3 stat cores, right? But I think it's not a bad idea at all to go and brush up your stat skills, or to, enroll on a few classes through ASQ, CQE and whatnot, to really brush up those skills. I think those skills would really come in very handy.
There's probably a new need for people who can really manage the data well, because we have so much data collection, and yet I've seen some companies that just did a ton of data collection, but they actually went out of business because they were collecting a bunch of data, but it wasn't coming to the return on investment that they needed. I hate to see that. It becomes technology for technology's sake rather than technology for business sake, or to change or drive actual improvement. And I think that's where quality and food safety can go, because of all the places that we have, quality and food safety kind of covers almost everything. Right. And if we learn to speak the jargon of finance, we can take what we know from all of these other areas, maintenance and operational pieces and things like that, and we collate them and understand them and drive to either cost reduction, improved quality, better performance against customer requirements, all of those things. But one of the things we don't do a very good job of sometimes, and I think this is going to be one of the areas that we're going to really talk about on this podcast, is how to speak money, because
Right.
that's where the upper C-suite people are going to want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about how much more money we want to make or how much more money we need in FSQA unless there's a return on investment. And if we can show them financially how this is going to return on investment, either it's going to make these customers happier, it's going to keep these customers instead of they go to another competitor, or we can cut the cost and that's going to improve our profitability, or we make a new product that is likely to be the next great thing and we can drive that to actual dollars, then we have something that we can really talk to the C suite about, and we can get the respect of them to actually implement. And that's something that FSQA has not actually done a lot of work on, I think. I know you just recently got your master's degree in business, and I think that a lot of that came up many times, did it not?
Yeah, most absolutely. One of the things I had to debate whether to pursue after my Bachelor of Science in Food Science and Tech from Davis, one of the big thing was, hey, do I continue to invest my time in a technical degree or MBA? I do know and I do want to go back to technical at some point, in the very near future. But I do find myself, because thankfully being entrusted to lead a good group, and to have some visibility within the organization, you do have to speak their jargon and understand the terms. And it's not necessarily the easiest thing where you can just spend time and read the books. I'm not that kind of student, so I have to go through a curriculum. So I decided to go with my EMBA with WSU, and yeah, I would say that a lot of the classes and lessons learned, the willingness to pay, jobs to be done, right? Exactly what the customer is looking for. And speaking to those jargons and understand those jargon and the origin of those desires, I think it's important to speak to those and understand from that angle rather than just black and white because the law, the regulations, because the signs say so, right? Incorporating that broad view in business and human psychology, I think has been very important and have been very beneficial from that standpoint. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds great. Well, we will catch up with you again sometime. I really appreciate your time. And thank you for all of your work and your insights. And we look forward to hearing from you again. That was great information. And we invite you to like, subscribe, and share. You can find more information and additional resources at heavensentfoodsafety.com. Join us next time for another episode of Quality Intelligence Food Safety.